Welcome to yet another horror story from my catalogue, The Verdant Scourge. Please enjoy. The Verdant Scourge by Martha M. C. Jenkins. The U-Haul, a garish orange beetle in a world of deep green and grey, rattled down the final, pothole-riddled track. Sarah Thorne gripped the wheel, her knuckles white. Beside her, Mark stared out at the oppressive wall of Douglas firs, their branches weighted with moss and silence. Charming, he muttered, the word sharp with a sarcasm that had become his default setting lately. In the back, Liam's headphones were a dull throb of bass, a technological barrier against the crushing isolation. Only Emily had her face pressed to the glass, her breath fogging a small circle. "It looks like a fairy tale castle," she whispered. The Thorne house did not look like a castle. It looked like a carcass. A Victorian manor. Its gingerbread trim was now rotten lace, its paint peeling back in leprous strips. Vivid, unnatural mosses clung to its eaves like emerald fur, and a tapestry of shelf fungi climbed one corner, pulsing subtly in the gloom. The air, when Sarah finally cut the engine, was thick and wet, smelling of loam, decay, and a cloying, sweet undertone, like lilies on a coffin. "It just needs some love," Sarah said, the mantra that had propelled them across the country. A fresh start. An inheritance from a great-aunt they'd never met. A woman who died, the lawyer had said with a peculiar cough, under mysterious circumstances. The will had been specific, the basement was not to be opened. The heavy steel door was to remain sealed. The first week was a blur of unpacking and renovation plans. Sarah, the architect, saw potential in the high ceilings and bay windows, sketching furiously while dismissing the constant, damp chill. Mark set up a studio in the sunroom, but his sketchpad remained empty. The quiet wasn't peaceful, it was watchful. He was the first to notice the sounds. Not the groans of an old house settling, but a soft, wet squelch from within the walls, followed by a sigh, like breath through 1,000 tiny pores. "The pipes," Sarah said, tapping a wall. "Probably just the pipes." Liam's phone had one bar of service, tethered to the outside world by a thread. He spent his days in a sullen bubble, until the family dog, a terrier named Pip, started acting strangely. Pip would scratch incessantly at the floorboards, whining at corners where the shadows seemed a shade too deep, a texture too velvety. Then he began to cough, a dry, rattling hack. Emily, however, was thriving. She spent hours talking to the moss men in the garden and drew pictures not of suns and flowers, but of intricate, spiraling patterns that looked disturbingly like mycelial networks. She'd hum a tuneless, discordant melody that set Mark's teeth on edge. "She's just imaginative," Sarah insisted, though a faint, web-like rash had begun to bloom on Emily's wrists, which she blamed on the local flora. The change in Mark was more pronounced. His artistic block shattered, but his drawings were nightmares in charcoal, grotesque, fleshy flowers with human eyes, faces melting into fungal shelves, the house rendered as a ribcage with a pulsing, green heart. He woke screaming from dreams of being buried alive, of something growing inside his chest, its roots threading through his veins. "It's the stress, Mark," Sarah said, her voice tight with her own denied fear. "The move, the money, it's getting to you." But the house was getting to all of them. The dampness was constant. A beautiful, bioluminescent moss began to glow in the corners of their bedroom at night, a soft, sickly green light. One morning, Sarah peeled back a strip of wallpaper to check for damp and gasped. The wall behind was alive, a pulsating, veined tapestry of white mycelium, throbbing gently. She slapped the paper back down, her heart hammering. Dry rot. A particularly vigorous strain. Liam, frustrated by the Wi-Fi dead zone, took to investigating the house itself. In the attic, buried in a trunk, he found the journals of Elias Thorne, the great-aunt's father. The entries started normally, then devolved into frantic, spidery scrawl. The whispers, "They sound like Clara, but Clara is gone. The sweetness in the air is a lie, it blooms inside you, it sings in your blood, the basement must never be opened, it is the heart, it is the mouth. Horrified, Liam researched online with his precious sliver of bandwidth. Local forums mentioned the Whispering House, an green sickness that had claimed the thorns for generations. He found scientific papers on Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, the zombie ant fungus, and theoretical articles on vast, intelligent mycelial networks. He pieced it together, an ancient, sentient parasite, not haunting the house, but being the house. He tried to tell his parents. It's a fungus. It's in the air we breathe. The spores, it's making us sick, making us see things. Sarah, now nursing a persistent cough and a foggy head, dismissed him. You've been on those conspiracy sites again. Mark just stared at his monstrous drawings, his eyes clouded and distant. The crisis point came with Pip. The dog's barking had become a wet gurgle. One evening, he convulsed and then was still. As they gathered around the small body, they watched in utter horror as a delicate, white mushroom fruited from the terrier's eye socket, followed by another from his gaping mouth, blooming with obscene speed. Sarah screamed. The sound broke the last vestige of denial. We are leaving. Now, she commanded, her voice raw with terror. They grabbed the car keys and ran for the door. But the front door, which had swung open easily hours before, was now stuck fast, sealed shut by a rubbery, fibrous growth that had erupted from the frame. The windows were similarly sealed over from the outside by a thick mat of vine-like mycelium, plunging the house into a twilight green. The house was trapping them. The air grew thicker, sweeter. Mark began to laugh, a low, gurgling sound. It's no use, he slurred, dark veins stark against his pale skin. It's so beautiful. Can't you hear it singing? He wandered towards the kitchen, towards the basement door, drawn like a moth to a flame. Mark, no. Sarah screamed. But Emily was already there, her small hand on the cold steel of the basement door. The nice voice says to come see, she said, her eyes dreamy and unfocused. It wants to show us its garden. Liam, acting on pure adrenaline, body slammed the front door. It didn't budge. He grabbed a fire poker and started hacking at the fungal seal, the substance weeping a sap that smelled of rotting honey. Sarah pulled Emily away from the basement door just as Mark reached for the heavy bolt. With a strength born of sheer desperation, she wrestled him away. Liam? Help me. They dragged the struggling, laughing Mark away from the door. The house reacted. The walls began to breathe visibly, a rhythmic contraction and expansion. The floorboards bulged and split, revealing the phosphorescent network beneath. The whispers became a chorus, a cacophony of their own voices, their deepest fears and regrets weaponized against them. Sarah's gaze fell on the fireplace. The chimney. A vertical escape route not yet consumed. The chimney, she yelled to Liam over the grotesque symphony of the house. They shoved furniture into the fireplace, creating a makeshift ladder. Liam went first, scrambling up into the tight, soot-filled brick tube. Sarah pushed a weeping, confused Emily up after him. Go. Don't look back. She turned for Mark. He was on his knees, caressing a patch of glowing moss on the wall, a beatific smile on his face as a tiny, purple mushroom cap pushed its way through the skin of his cheek. Mark, please, she begged. He looked at her, his eyes no longer his own. Stay, he whispered, his voice a perfect mimic of her own. We can be together forever. Part of the beautiful whole. With a final, heart-shattering sob, Sarah turned and clawed her way up the chimney after her children. She squeezed through the metal grate at the top, collapsing onto the steep, moss-slick roof, gasping the clean, damp night air. They half slid, half fell to the ground, not stopping until they were 100 yards away, collapsing in the wet ferns beneath the ancient, indifferent trees. They turned back, panting, bleeding, and watched. The thorn house was no longer a house. It was a beacon. Every window, every crack, blazed with a furious, pulsating green light. The very structure seemed to sway, alive and hungry. And from within, beneath the chorus of whispers, they could just make out a single, familiar voice, laughing a low, wet, contented laugh. They had escaped with their lives, but not unchanged. The spores were already in them. Sarah could feel a tickle in her lungs that wasn't from the cold, and Liam scratched at a new, web-like rash on his neck. Emily just hummed that strange, ancient tune, her eyes fixed on the glowing mansion. They had fled the house, but the house, the Verdant Scourge, was still with them. It was in the air they breathed, the soil beneath their feet. It was in their blood. And it was patient. It knew, eventually, they would have to come back. All things return to the earth. And this earth was hungry. Well, friends, while Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, zombie ant fungus, does exist, but it cannot be passed to humans. But, again, in these days of climate change, who knows? Please like, subscribe, comment and share if you enjoyed this story, and until next time, much love from me.